Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's Meeting of the Minds webinar on Sacramento's Urban Innovation Agenda. During each webinar, we take a reading on who has joined us, so you'll see a poll pop up soon asking which sector best defines you. That'll help our presenters know a little bit more about who's in the webinar with us today. My name is Jessie Feller-Hahn, and I'm the Executive Director of Meeting of the Minds. Thanks so much for joining us. We are a global thought leadership network and platform with year-round digital and in-person programming. We connect thought leaders, global sustainability, innovation, and technology leaders across sectors to share best practices, tools, and solutions through our blog, our monthly webinar series, and more than 20 in-person events each year. Our 12th annual Fall Leadership Summit convenes in Sacramento from November 27 to 29. So we're excited to get a little preview from Maria and Louis today about what's happening on the ground in Sacramento. A few housekeeping notes to begin. Because of our very large audience in attendance today, you will remain muted throughout the event. Today's slides and a recording of today's webinar will be available on our website after the event for you to share with colleagues that couldn't make it today. We will have a Q&A during the second half of the hour, so when you have a question, please type them into the questions panel in your attendee control panel as you think of them on the right of your screen. So we will see who's here with us. So huge amount of private sector and entrepreneurs, 63%. That's probably the highest we've ever seen, actually. Public sector, 20%, and then a mix of nonprofit, philanthropy, and academics. Thanks so much for filling that out. That's helpful to see. We'll appreciate your input regarding today's webinar. So a short survey will pop up when you close your browser at the end of the event. So without further ado, I'm pleased to introduce our two presenters today. First, we're going to hear from Maria McCouganal, who's the Chief Information Officer for the City of Sacramento. She's an accomplished leader with 20 plus years of experience and extensive in public and private sector IT. She's focused on implementing game-changing innovative technology solutions across organizations, and she's known for building strong partnerships with executives, operational business units, and the community. With Maria, we have Louis Stewart, who currently serves as the City of Sacramento's first Chief Innovation Officer within the Mayor's Office for Innovation and Entrepreneurship. Mr. Stewart is responsible for the development of a broad citywide portfolio of programs and initiatives that support, drive, influence, and build upon the City of Sacramento's economic inclusion philosophy, business development strategies, goals, customer relationships, and business results. More about them and their background is available on our event page. So without further ado, Maria, the floor is yours.
Okay, how exciting. Well, thank you for that introduction, and I'm looking forward to a really interesting dialogue. Louis and I are going to go through a very brief presentation to help sort of frame out what we've been doing in Sacramento, give you a little bit of information on our vision, our strategy, a little bit of context, and then we're going to walk through a couple of examples of exactly what we've been doing and sort of talk about the opportunities and challenges when we bring these sort of visionary ideas into the real world and try to implement them. So with that, I'll tell you a little bit about my background. As Jessie introduced, I am the Chief Information Officer for the City of Sacramento. I've been doing this for about 4.5 years here in this current role, and we've had great opportunities here to affect, I think, real change in the community. And it's an immense and exciting challenge, sometimes daunting, to pull these ideas into fruition. But I think we've got some really good examples and exciting opportunities here. It's been a great and exciting environment where Louis and I have been working together with the mayor and the city manager and a variety of partners throughout the community, both locally and in the private sector, to develop these ideas. And we're excited to be participants and part of what's happening here. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to Louis, and we'll just kind of do this as a casual, informal communication back between Louis and I as we're in different rooms, and I control the slides. So with that, Louis?
Thanks, Maria, and welcome everybody to this webinar. Happy to be part of this. Thank you, Jesse, and Meeting of the Minds for having us participate. As far as my background, for the past 7 years, I've been honored to have a front row seat to the innovations that make California and in some cases the world tick, because California is a microcosm of what's possible and Sacramento is its capital. Obviously, as Maria said, we can't dive too deep into everything. But in the next 20, 30 minutes, we want to start a dialogue with all of you guys and hope to be able to truly stay in touch and look forward to meeting a lot of you when Meeting of the Minds comes to Sacramento. So today, as Maria said, we're going to walk you through some of what we see coming, some of what we're doing, and some of where we're going. And hope that you guys find this a very interesting dialogue.
Okay. Well, as many of you know, and many of you are actually actively engaged in making history, this is a pretty exciting and important point in our history as a society where technology is pretty much pervasive in all aspects of our lives, whether you're, 2 years old or 85 years old, as my mother is now. And government and businesses are expected to deliver more and more in this digital world. And this convergence of IT and societal forces are really rapidly changing how we get things done. And our cities are this, opportunity area for us to really be progressive. And I think Sacramento stands uniquely in that it has a really long history of progressiveness. I've been actually living in the city of Sacramento for quite a number of years, and I feel that, as society changes and expectations change and our technology world changes, that Sacramento has really been progressive in trying to aggressively and actively step forward in ways that, is unique and is really defining how we are and as a community. And it's the work of our time. Louis?
Yeah, absolutely. So what you guys see on the screen there is a vision that the mayor set out at our autonomous transportation open standard launch back on April 19th. And that was Sacramento and the region jumping into the autonomous car conversation in a very different way. And when I started with the city about a month later, and the mayor set this vision forth, kind of reminding everybody where Sacramento has been in innovation and the heritage that Sacramento has. I understood that it was important to construct an inclusive ecosystem that not only enabled entrepreneurs to thrive, but also promoted long-term economic growth, job creation through innovation. But it wasn't just about doing tech for tech's sake. We needed to build around the triple helix model, which is government, academia, and industry coming together to, yes, bring more tech to the region, more jobs, but do it from a more citizen-centric perspective, looking at societal challenges in creative ways. Next slide, Maria. So just a real quick, kind of level setting of where Sacramento is. Sacramento is the fourth largest metropolitan area in California behind Los Angeles, San Francisco, and San Diego, and the 27th largest in the United States. A lot of people actually don't know that about the Sacramento region. Sacramento was voted the most diverse community in 2002, and the average growth since the year 2000 has been about 3.85%. And as most of you guys may deduce, with that kind of growth, Sacramento faces some of the typical challenges as many cities, many modern cities today, like homelessness. And the mayor has taken that bull by the horn and led a coalition to pull together over $108 million for whole person care and attacking that citywide and region-wide challenge head first. And more people are coming to the table because it's in everybody's vested interest to make sure that all the citizens of the region are taken care of. Concerns around gentrification. And so Sacramento is kind of at the forefront of developing workforce readiness programs so people can stay in their neighborhoods and not get pushed out because they're not job ready or the jobs don't fit what they're doing. looking at congestion. And I know Maria's going to talk about our Verizon partnership and the transportation piece later. And that's really around smart infrastructure and the reality of an autonomous future and using autonomy as a tool. Connections to West Sac and the rest of the region and beyond. So, that leads into our electric vehicle and sustainability and overall mobility policy. Autonomous cars. How do we move from a place of single occupancy vehicles and basically a robotic future, if you will. Next slide. So, right now there's a paradigm shift happening. In the 60s, manufacturing accounted for about 27% of all jobs. And back then, manufacturing was a good paying job. With the rise of STEM-based businesses and a more knowledge-based economy, the importance of manufacturing has declined around 13%. And as we all know, technology is going to continue to disrupt. It's not slowing down. The emerging market requires people and companies to be agile and adaptable. It requires cities to do that as well. Traits that our collective community have shown over generations and can absolutely do again by stepping into our collective strength as the capital of the sixth largest economy in the world. There is a need for us to embrace the new reality so that our communities aren't continuously falling behind and have a drive to be more inclusive in the innovation ecosystem. Next slide, Maria. So it's time to create some new pathways, right? I'm of the school of thought that all this new technology will open up new opportunities for the community as entrepreneurs and to revitalize the workforce if we step into the future. We have to look at opportunities to communicate, to connect, to collaborate, and coordinate around these new economies. In these evolving ecosystems, our community are largely untapped, diverse, but a dynamic resource. From what I've seen, a lot of it boils down to access and awareness. By doing these four things, connecting, communicating, collaborating, and coordinating, we can share learnings faster in order to identify shifts in our community's needs to be aware that we need to be aware of in order to move fast at the speed of change. We have to seek opportunities to expose our collective community to what's coming, but also be on the front end of it as much as possible. Part of my responsibility in this role is to find ways to do those four things: communicate, connect, collaborate, and coordinate. Next slide. One of the ways that I'm trying to facilitate this is really by shifting the narrative in Sacramento. Historically, Sacramento's been known as just a government town. We're listening to Mayor Steinberg, listening to conversations that the city manager, Howard Chan, has had. There is a collective will and talking to the council members. There's a collective will to figure out how we activate all 8 districts in Sacramento and create a living laboratory where companies can come in and but actually be in a way that interact with the community. So if you're an autonomous car company, how do you start training a workforce of the future? Are you willing to do show and tells at junior highs so that kids can actually look, touch, feel, smell, ride in an autonomous car so they can envision the future? How do you start building a collective community that can address some of those societal challenges that cities our size face? And so with the Sacramento Urban Technology Lab, it's really about changing the narrative. We are a government town, but we actually have leadership in place that can do. We have Mayor Steinberg, who's in the legislature for years, and now is working here in Sacramento. We have Congresswoman Matsui. We have Senator Pan. We have all these leaders set up around Sacramento, and the connectivity between them is astounding. And so if there is a way to solve some of these challenges or work on some of these challenges, we have the government power to actually influence some of those change and put Sacramento on the front end of standard setting around the future. Next slide. Part of what we needed to do in this change in narrative is really tell people what Sacramento is about. So we picked out these 7 verticals: mobility, clean tech and sustainability, health, IT, and life science, food systems, Internet of Things and cybersecurity, government and civic tech, workforce development. I already spoke about the government piece, the clean tech and sustainability piece. Working with our internal staff here at City Hall, trying to do data-driven water conservation to improve the city's ability to educate, communicate, and influence behavior around water conservancy measures. Workforce development. The mayor has a 1,000 Strong program where he wants to get 1,000 high school students full-time, year-round paid internships, and the community's buying into that. Life science. We have 4 of the leading healthcare systems here in Sacramento and a wonderful med campus with UC Davis. So if Sacramento just leans into life science a little bit, yeah, sure, we can actually come up with some cool solutions for our local citizenry. But we actually have the ability on the economic side to become probably 3rd or 5th in California just by leaning a little bit into life science and biotech, thanks to our the presence of a university like UC Davis. Next slide. Oh, Maria, did you have anything on this one? Sorry.
Yeah, I'd just add a little bit that, this is a pretty broad and ambitious, I think, platform that we're trying to develop. And as we move forward in this conversation, you'll see how we've tried to approach the work that we're doing to encompass as many of the 7 vertical areas as we can when we engage in something, instead of just looking at one particular vertical and focusing all of our efforts there. We're really trying to hit on this sort of broad initiative base, and to make sure that we not only move the needle on one of these elements, but that we significantly move the needle on all of the elements and make real effective change. And here are some examples. We have so given that this framing that Louis has just put out, there's a lot there, and so how do we make that real and tangible for our city? We have been working on this for a while. One of our significant steps forward was the development of something we call the Demonstration Partnership Policy. It was adopted in April of 2017, so just shy of a year ago. And it is this policy framework that allows us to engage in innovative ways with our community, with private partners, with education, and on all of the variety of fronts that we need to engage on to be able to move our initiatives across the 7 different verticals in significant ways. It is the basic policy framing that will allow us to move quickly and be more nimble, certainly significantly more nimble than the traditional sort of RFP process that cities usually go through to engage. And although RFPs are certainly not going away and that whole long process of engagement, we recognized that we needed to do something different in order to be able to start building this new world that we live in, and create some unique and innovative partnerships and be nimble. So we're going to walk through a couple of these. I'm going to hand it over to Louis to talk about our Rails program.
Yeah, so before we move there real quick, actually you can go ahead to the next slide, that's fine. We're going to begin to see a huge push for place-based economic development in and around the region. Our job is to stay engaged because in most cases we need to serve as or find the trusted messenger in the community. The programs and policy solutions for economic development must be adapted to cultural norms, circumstances, and the needs of a people. Truth is, there's really no panacea, but policies where possible should seek to address challenges related to such basic needs as food, childcare, healthcare, and transportation. All those feed into being ready for jobs. All those lead into employability. All those lead into education. Without addressing these traditional barriers to entry, inclusion is super tough. Oftentimes, there is an attempt to address the entire challenge. In my current role, I understand that I can't address everything, but by using the 4 C's that I mentioned earlier, I'm able to bite off small chunks in order to increase access and awareness and help address a stated pain point and hopefully gain greater acceptance for new technology. One of the cool things that Sacramento has done to really step into the innovation ecosystem and show commitment is by standing up a $10 million innovation growth fund, $1 million of which was pulled aside to do annual grant program called the RAILS program. Stands for Rapid Acceleration, Innovation, and Leadership in Sacramento. You guys see the ceilings and floors on those awards. In 2016, there were, for that $1 million, there were $18 million in requests, 15 awards that first year, and we'd wrapped everything up in October of this year, October of 2017. And we also, on that previous slide, you saw something called the Creative Economy Pilot Project. That was a one-time expenditure of $500,000 to see what was out there on the creative economy in all 8 districts, to see the diversity and breadth of what's happening in the confluence of food, art, and tech in Sacramento. And for that $500,000, we got $7.5 million worth of requests, and there were 57 awards. So we're looking at trying to get, going back to that innovation to influence economic prosperity in the region. Sacramento is looking at ways to tackle that. We also have a couple other programs in Sacramento, to bring folks in, but also to do innovative things in City Hall. We have a City Hall Tech Fund to do, different kind of tech innovation inside City Hall. And we also have an innovation incentive program looking at how do we help some smaller startups move to Sacramento and relocate. Next slide, Maria. Yeah, and so earlier we spoke about the 4 C's: communicate, connect, collaborate, and coordinate. Really, that's the mantra for what I do and the Mayor's Office for Innovation and Entrepreneurship. Maria is going to take us through an example of how we use those steps to step into an opportunity with Verizon. Maria?
Okay, so as you can start to see from some of the things that we're starting to frame out, is we're really trying to take this multiple tacks to build community, to engage our neighborhoods and the people that live in them, and help them build the kind of work skills that they need to be able to have opportunities to grow. And you'll see as I frame out this public-private partnership that we entered in with Verizon, how we've done that in one way. There are many different initiatives. Some of them Louis just spoke about, the grants that are very targeted to specific neighborhoods, specific populations, about education, about women's leadership in tech. It's about helping our kids in our neighborhoods that need the most help, and being very broad. This is, we think, our strategic positioning. And you'll see as I start to frame out this public-private partnership with Verizon, how we've tried to engage on multiple fronts. So first off, I just want to say this was quite a heavy lift. It involved many different people in order to make it happen. We actually executed this public-private partnership in June of 2017, and we are in the midst of delivering on this program. It involved the mayor himself, the mayor's office, many of Louis's staff, Louis himself, my team, the city manager, Howard Chan, and many department heads throughout the city to be able to really step up and lean into what is a pretty innovative program. It also required significant effort on Verizon's part to be progressive, to kind of sit at the table as a full partner, as opposed to, a normal, like we're on each side of the table trying to get the most that we can from each other. It was really us sort of linking arms and coming forward together to build this really, I think, unique and partnership that I haven't seen anywhere else on this type of scale. Lonnie Ingram from the Verizon team was instrumental, as well as many others, in making this happen. The partnership is broad and is a significant investment from both the city and Verizon. As it equates to about $100 million in investment from Verizon, and it spans multiple fronts. So I'm going to walk through the different components. I think we hit of the verticals that Lewis framed out in the previous slide. This partnership directly impacts at least 5 of those, and then indirectly impacts others. So as a youth who grew up in underserved community, this is really important to me and many others within the organization, that opportunity is everything, and it can fundamentally change the outcomes for young persons in our community. And we are, in all of the important partnerships that we engage in, we are really focused on making sure that we don't leave youth behind. And this is one such effort. This partnership provides STEM programming and up to about 100 jobs for youth over 5 years. It was key that we made sure that not only was this helping to advance high school students in their individual, as they're moving through high school, and helping to support them from our priority neighborhoods, but also giving them a pathway to move from high school into community college and 4-year degrees, and ultimately into jobs. Again, it's super high priority for all of us here, including the mayor as well. Also, equity and access is a very high priority. This partnership doesn't get us all the way there and get everybody completely on the same level ground, but it does make some significant steps forward in providing free Wi-Fi services in 27 of our city parks. It secures those for quite a number of years. There are digital kiosks that we'll be implementing as part of this program as well, which have free Wi-Fi coverage associated with those digital kiosks. It also has a variety of specific curated content that will be delivered for those neighborhoods where the kiosks are implemented. We are also delivering citizen engagement tools. Those are through kiosks, as well as a variety of other different services where we are connecting with our community. These are digital kiosks. This is public service type functions. These are connecting city facilities where we are lacking facilities, and a variety of other types of fundamental communication points with the city to help engage our community and bring focus to our neighborhoods, which are really one of our key assets here in Sacramento. We have a very diverse community and neighborhoods that reflect that diversity, and we want to engage on all those different fronts. The partnership also helps to deliver on a variety of smart city solutions to help us achieve our goals for Vision Zero, for traffic management and public safety, and you can see some of these details outlined in the bullet points here. I think as we move into the discussion part and question and answer part of this, there may be some specific questions, but just to say, there's infrastructure investment in this partnership with Verizon. There are a variety of different smart city solutions and community engagement solutions, as well as workforce and other investments. Infrastructure, as I mentioned, there's a big infrastructure development component. One of the city's objectives is to increase broadband access to all, and as we are doing in other areas, we're trying to do that in a broad way. That is both helping to facilitate the development of wireless and wireline development across all the different partners and service providers in the community. As we know, in the small cell and communication worlds, that capacity is becoming increasingly a difficult problem to solve, and that service providers are looking to expand their networks to be able to serve their citizens, their community, and those are the same community that we're also serving. So to the extent that we can facilitate that, we feel that is in the interest of our community, and we're doing that with this Verizon deal. And I'll talk a little bit more about how we see this fitting together. But Verizon will be building out throughout the course of this engagement hundreds of miles of fiber optic cabling, as well as small cell infrastructure to support data communications in the cellular network. So there are a lot of aspects of this partnership where Verizon is helping the city to advance its objectives, and we are also a partner, and building this balanced partnership is some of the things that we are bringing to the table to help Verizon meet their demands from their customers as well. The city currently leases access to streetlight infrastructure to deliver small cell technology for all service providers. In this particular deal, we deferred lease rates for 101 streetlight poles for small cells, and their rates associated with that, as well as try to strategically position ourselves, and that seems to be doing well, to be one of the early adopters of 5G. This city and Verizon have just announced that we're likely to be the first 5G city in the nation to deliver on high-speed wireless internet service to the home. That is expected to be delivered early in summer. And that the city has really worked hard to work across different departments to streamline the permit process associated with development of small cells and fiber optic networks. And that is the basic framing for the for what we've been doing. I know that was really quick, and there's a lot of details behind that, but I want to make sure that we have enough time to engage in answering specific questions. All of the details of the partnership are available. They're public records and documents, and we're happy to share those with you if you're interested. The city is really focused on, solving real-world problems that improve the quality of life for our residents, businesses, and our visitors. And we do believe that these kinds of broad-reaching, comprehensive partnerships and initiatives to move on sort of multiple fronts at one time are necessary. We are excited about where we're going and what the opportunities will present to us, such as positioning ourselves as the early adopter of network technologies like 5G and autonomous vehicle infrastructure, and moving the needle for our youth and our communities. And we're leading, and we're excited to be doing that.
Great. Thank you so much, Maria Lewis. Great framework to start the conversation and the Q&A with the audience and attendees today. There are a lot of questions that have already come in. So a few of you are asking about the slides. Yes, they will be available on the event page on our website, and they're already available in the handouts section in the control panel. And there's actually 2 PDFs there because we needed to rotate one of them. So click on the rotated Sacramento Urban Innovation.pdf if you want to see the slides in PDF format. So a lot of questions about mobility from maybe 5 or 6 folks who are attending today. Louis, you mentioned the connections with West Sacramento and some mobility initiatives. And maybe we could start and just tell us a little bit more about what Sacramento is doing. I know you guys are working on shuttles and curbside EV infrastructure, electric bike share, Electrify America, train service. So if you could touch on some of those and how Sacramento, how the city is tackling the mobility opportunities and challenges. And then I'm sure, Maria, you want to add something to that as well.
Yeah, so obviously Sacramento is not Silicon Valley, right? So all the companies aren't in our backyard. So we had to be super thoughtful around how we approach, especially the autonomous car space. Because there's concerns about drone cars riding around. There's concerns about the human-robot interaction. How are humans going to learn how to interact with these cars? How's the robot going to learn how to respond to humans? So, we set out this big challenge back in April of last year called AUTOS, Autonomous Transportation Open Standard, about how Sacramento can start addressing some of those mobility things. But as I said, it's more citizen-based. So we're looking at use cases in the autonomous space to help citizens, whether that be students with an autonomous shuttle at Sac State, the connection between West Sac and Sacramento, looking at obviously streetcar, autonomous buses, those kind of things once the regs for 10,000 pound plus kind of get out there. But then something as simple as on the healthcare side, how do you get underserved moms to their perinatal cycle visits? So working with companies to try to develop use cases that allow for the eventuality of autonomous cars picking a mom up wherever she's at, get to the doctor's appointment, and the car, a car be there waiting for her to take her back to where she's going. So moms no longer have to walk, however long, because there's no bus service, there's no transportation mode. So you get healthier babies, healthier moms, healthier citizens. Keeps them possibly ready for entering the workforce at some point if they're not employed already. There is a bike share program that we have between West Sac and Sacramento. Actually right outside City Hall, there's some of the first bikes that you can actually take across the bridge and connect into West Sac. And I know they're looking at broadening that partnership with some e-mobility providers that will include scooters and bikes and maybe eventually something else. So they're, and we're looking at protected bike lanes as a pilot here in Sacramento, where the bike lane is actually curbside and the parking is offset. So if you switch the bike lane and the parking in most cities, then you have a protected bike lane, so you don't actually have to build out additional curbs on the infrastructure side. So we're piloting that kind of stuff in Sacramento, and really working with RT and Yellow Bus and all the surrounding bus systems to figure out how we augment service. So where routes may have been eliminated, how do we get some of those picked back up? How do we figure out first last mile stuff? So we're truly trying to be intentional in the mobility space to figure out the connectivity throughout the region. So we're working with SACOG and their City Lab plan, and Rancho Cordova is working on some stuff. And really, we're looking at this as truly a regional effort because part of what the industry concern is in the autonomous space, especially, is that there's not a patchwork of regulations that get created city to city. So it's important for us as a collective 6-9 county region, depending on who you ask, that we all work together to figure some of this stuff out.
Can you just quickly say what SACOG is for those folks who are not California-based?
SACOG, Sacramento Area County or Sacramento Area something of government.
Council
of Government. So they're actually developing. They're all they represent a 6-county region here in the Sacramento area, and looking at transportation plans, looking at prosperity plans, looking at really long-term planning for the what's next. That we all need to be working on collectively as government together.
Great. Maria, I'm sure you have something to add. Yeah,
I'll just mention for those who are interested in transportation and mobility, I saw on the attendee list that there are several folks. The city just adopted a Vision Zero strategy, and they're in that strategic document, which is available publicly as well, is some of what Lewis was talking about is how do we when we start to look at multimodal development and different types of creative, I think, solutions to getting people on their bikes and in different types of alternate modes of transportation, that we do that in a comprehensive and sort of strategic way. If you look at you can look at that document. I think that'll give you some framing of what Lewis had alluded to with things like protected bike lanes and various other types of modes of transportation, and how we're trying to do that, in a safe way and in a progressive way at the same time.
Great. And I'll just add, at our annual summit in Sacramento in November, we'll be tackling these mobility innovations in Sacramento with workshop tours. We'll be going out and looking at what the region is doing in the mobility space. There's some other initiatives that weren't mentioned today, including electric car share program, EV car share program, free to affordable housing developments in Sacramento that's already at 4 housing developments, and there'll be at 8 more at the end of the year. So we'll be visiting some of those. There's some amazing carpooling initiatives with, at schools, and some other initiatives that we'll be touching on as well. So too much probably to get into today, and there's a million more questions. I'm going to combine a few others around some tech firms on attending today, and as well as some others are wondering, Lewis, how they can get involved in the Sacramento Urban Tech Lab. Some other individuals are wondering how they can access smart city capabilities. Not sure exactly what they meant by that, but essentially, how do we engage better? How do folks engage better with the initiatives you shared today, and what are the kind of the best entry points?
Okay.
Yeah, so fantastic question. Do you want to go first, Maria?
Oh, no, go ahead, Lewis. That's fine.
No, yeah, for the Sacramento Urban Technology Lab, I understand that it's an initiative that's the whole city. So, right, it's not a physical location. It's really trying to set up Sacramento to be a place where programs and initiatives like Aggie Square that the UC Davis Chancellor May and the mayor are working on to bring one of UC Davis's schools into Sacramento in the hopefully not too distant future. When it lands, how do we make sure that Sacramento is ready to support that? It's about how do we get the co-working spaces, maker spaces, innovation centers to a place of sustainability where they have support from the community as well as from civic leaders. So if you go to our website, innovatesac.org, there should be a button that lets you click and suggest some partnerships. We want to hear from folks about what you want, what you may be interested, what you think is scalable and at a city level, so that we can bring in our colleagues like Maria in IT or Ryan over in transportation, or some of the other folks in the building, so that we can see if a pilot is possible through that demonstration partnership policy that Maria mentioned.
Yeah, so in terms of framing out, how you engage in these smart cities initiatives, I'm not sure exactly where the question was going, but I'll just kind of say a few general comments. One is, within the context of the public-private partnership with Verizon, is that we are in the process of actually rolling out those technologies at scale across the entire city. So we have the infrastructure layer, which is the fiber optic layer, and the network layer for radio communications, cellular communications. And that is what's being developed right now. On top of that, we'll start to roll out more of the smart city solutions. We're starting to just really, a few of those are about right on the cusp of being delivered. But as we move forward in the engagement, we will have those deployed throughout the city across all the different neighborhoods. And, it was really important to us when we engage in these partnerships that we do this at scale and across the variety of different neighborhoods that we have across the city, that we don't just do it in the downtown area or around the arena or in a specific affluent neighborhood, but that we do it in all of our diverse neighborhoods. So this partnership with Verizon does that. Geographically diverse, economically diverse. It is really broad and attempts to understand our community on a lot of different levels. So, for example, the implementation of the smart city solutions around traffic management and public safety, those are spread throughout the community across multiple different, intersection areas, connected corridors, and in different geographic locations around the city. And that is to ensure that as we start to develop these smart cities technologies, that they actually scale and that we have meaningful and useful information. So some ways that partners, academics or others can engage with the city is all of that data that we're collecting through the partnership with Verizon will be available in an open data format. We have been working on different ways to try to leverage that data to not only do what we, meet our objectives in the short term that we know we have, but also to position ourselves for the sort of unexpected in the new world that will be our future. So that's one, a couple of comments on that. The other, just to be clear, that we did make a significant effort to make sure that when we engage in partnerships that they are non-exclusive, meaning that we in no way restrict ourselves from engaging with other partners, even in similar types of activities or extending our partnerships that we initiate. We are excited about what opportunities might be presented to the city to actually move the needle effectively through partnerships.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you, Maria. Great.
You're welcome.
We have a lot of other questions. I'm going to combine a few. Maybe Lois, you can touch on this first. How have you guys at the city been partnering and engaging with nonprofits and academic institutions, particularly UC Davis and Sacramento State, as well as more disadvantaged communities? And what does that community engagement process look like? Lois, maybe you first.
Yeah, sure. So I mentioned Aggie Square with UC Davis, but we're also working with UC Davis in the transportation front with their ITS folks. We're working with UC Davis on food system stuff. The ag school. Found out that UC Davis also has the number one brewing program out there, and so now we're interfacing with the 70 breweries that we have in the region to roll out some new brewmasters. So there's that. With Sac State just received a gift of $6 million to do innovation entrepreneurship. So we're engaging with them to figure out how one, we can help with their transportation needs. We talked about the shuttle earlier, but we're also looking at how do we help them, how do we engage with them to build out the programming for innovation entrepreneurship, to build out a makerspace that the community has access to, and those kind of things. With UOP, University of the Pacific, they're looking to grow their presence in Sacramento. So we're working with them on particularly workforce and future workforce needs. So that's on the academic front. As far as the nonprofits, on the food system side, there's a group here called Broccoli HQ that focuses on food literacy. So we're trying to figure out how we kind of help build out some of their urban farming and food literacy programs. So we're looking at all kinds of ways. Maria's right that we're super interested in partnering. And I think as long as it makes sense and as long as there's capacity of resource at the city level to take on some of these engagements, we're right there.
Great. Maria, anything to add to that?
Just a few. We also, through the grant programs that Lewis had mentioned. We are, helping to engage some of these, some of the educators that are out in the community who are trying to stimulate interest in some of our underserved communities in tech and innovation and entrepreneurship. And, we're really actively trying to engage and help those communities also move forward. So through the traditional methods of, or educational methods of, partnership, but also through some of these small nonprofits that have sprung up in our neighborhoods to help specific target groups. We have also, as an organization, gone out into the community to try to help educate and stimulate interest and excitement around tech and innovation by going into our middle schools and specifically focusing on young girls in technology, and that's also a really great area of connection and excitement.
Yeah, one last quick thing on the community engagement piece. I forgot for the SUTTLE is what we call it, Sacramento Urban Technology Lab. We're hoping to go out in the next few months and start basically year-round engagement with community to start visioning what Sacramento looks like in their neighborhood for 2025 and beyond. Look for that and the results of that to come out. We're also looking at how do we elevate, how do we work with industry to basically adopt schools in some underserved areas, but where there's economic opportunity for the community to raise up. So that's some of the undertaking that will happen in 2018 as well.
Great. So much going on. Congratulations, you guys. I know you touched, Lewis, quickly on a question on the food systems. Let's get into that a little bit, and then I have a couple questions for you, Marie, about the Verizon partnership that I'm going to combine. So first, Lewis, can you say a little bit more about you have a vertical around food systems. There are some questions around initiatives around urban ag, and I know we're going to be focusing a workshop tour on that or two at our annual summit in November in Sacramento. The Center for Land-Based Learning is doing incredible stuff. There's some really amazing food systems work that's combining jobs, economic development, workforce training, youth leadership, and food together. So can you touch a little bit about a few of those initiatives?
Yeah, so I would have to caveat this by saying here within my office, it's not so much that we have initiatives, but we're trying to support and bring awareness to initiatives that are actually happening out in the community. So with that said, with the advent of the coming of autonomous cars, if you're a planner, you have to think about how parking structures are going to be repurposed in the future if everybody's not driving their cars to an urban core. You have to think about if we're the farm to fork capital, how do we bring in the ability to grow more foods and feed the citizens in a more sustainable way? So I think we're right on the edge of starting to explore that, and there's definitely some partners in this ecosystem that are coming to the table to have a very detailed conversation. But we also have folks coming in wanting to look at water conservation that have live food programs. So how do we get that industry part of the triple helix involved where the industry may not actually be present in Sacramento, but are willing to engage in the conversation, which may lead to future jobs and future opportunities down the line. So we're looking at really the convergence of all this stuff, and where's the overlap for some of these sectors and verticals.
Maria, do you want to say anything about maybe internet access for more rural areas in the county and connecting to farmers? Or I know that's a big topic recently too.
Yeah, well, we are actively trying to expand the access for all, including our more rural residents. But within the city, we are fairly urbanized or suburban. There are a few areas still out. We're about 100 square miles and population of about 500,000 within the city's footprint footprint proper, but we have partners that we're working actively with in the region to help make connectivity across those areas. We're also, actively, as in the Verizon contract, working hard to, build connectivity, build up our partners and those service providers to our community so that they're connected.
Great.
They have infrastructure here. Yeah.
Great. Speaking of Verizon, can you touch a little bit on the business model for both sides of the P3 or the public-private partnership, and maybe a little bit about how you guys are measuring your ROI on the dollars you've invested, if you can share some of that?
Okay. So briefly, the basic frame.
3 minutes.
I'm like, the basic framing is, as you probably are aware, pretty much every network service provider is experiencing challenges in capacity in their networks. And we've known this for a while in the industry, that networks are going to move into, from large towers into these small cell networks, and that they would further densify as we move into the 5G world. And in order to do that, the service providers need to not only develop the multiple locations of their facilities in the small cell infrastructure, but also they're going to need to be able to build out their fiber optic networks to be able to backhaul. And so from the service provider's perspective, from Verizon's perspective, they need to invest significantly in the development of fiber optic infrastructure and the placement of small cell technology. And that's a pretty expensive endeavor and challenging endeavor in doing that in multiple communities across the nation and really in the world. As most jurisdictions do that very differently, it can be very cumbersome and challenging and expensive and difficult to coordinate between the fiber optic build out and the small cell technology build out. So that's big investments on the private side. On the public side, of course, we're trying to manage that so that it has a minimal impact on the community. We also are interested in leveraging some of that infrastructure that the service providers will be building out in our communities for our communities. So basically the balance is they're investing this significant amount of money. They're giving us pieces of that infrastructure to use for city purposes, and we are on the other side deferring lease revenues for them over a period of time and trying to streamline the business process. That's the basic balance.
Great.
And then there's lots of details behind that, which I'll save for another time.
Yes, and there are a lot of documents publicly available.
That's correct.
Where people can find more about the partnership and how it was formed and shaped and all of that. So just do a good Google search or let us know if you can't find something, and we'll ask Maria and Louis where to find it. So a lot of questions about that we are not going to be able to get to today, but we are intending to tackle them through our blog throughout the year, at our annual summit in November, where you'll be able to meet Maria and Louis in person and maybe ask them some follow-up questions. There's some questions about data management and data ownership. There's questions about smart parking. There's questions about scalable elements to the Verizon partnership, autonomous vehicles, cybersecurity. We're going to be talking all about these themes at our annual summit. So we hope to see all of you in November. And if in between now and then, we'll be sure to keep you all in the loop. We are convening our first, wanted to announce our first meetup in Sacramento on March 15th in downtown Sacramento. We'll be sending an email out about that in the next 2 days. So stay tuned, and we can hopefully see all of you, and you can meet each other and continue this conversation next month. And that meetup is actually going to be sponsored by Dassault Systems, so drinks are on them. And we are really excited. Thank you so much, Maria and Louis, for joining us today. This has been extremely insightful and helpful to get a better lay of the land of everything that's going on in Sacramento. You guys clearly have a lot of work on your plates every day. Really appreciate your time, and we appreciate everyone's feedback attending today, and we hope to see you at next month's webinar on our blog. More information about all of our events and resources are available at meetingoftheminds.org. A short survey will pop up when you close your browser. Please let us know what you thought of the webinar today. We're always looking to make this experience as valuable for you guys as possible, all of you out there working on the future of sustainable and smart cities. So that concludes our session for today. Thank you, Louis and Maria, and have a wonderful rest of your day, everybody.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you, everybody.